As for my American friend, the CIA thinks it can infiltrate the mountain of Dr. Cron.
You can't scare me, you
Take him to Detroit.
No! No, not Detroit! No! No, please! Anything but that! No! No! No!
This way, gentlemen. I'll show you to your rooms.
Hello and welcome to the Page to Pixel podcast. I am your host, Reid, and joined with me, as always, is my dear boy, best boy in crime, Jeremy Ruck. What's up, Jeremy?
Hey, Reid, how you doing there, guy?
Oh, pretty good, cousin. How you doing? What's going on in your world? I heard you had a little something for us to do to start this episode.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I had a real good time with you guys the other week when I was there. So get this. So when I was leaving, I saw some youths out there selling some lemonade. I figured, this would be a great opportunity for me to teach these kids the importance of business insurance. So I go up to them, and it's clear they ain't getting it. So I decided to give them some real-life examples, like what happens if someone comes and steals your lemons, or knocks the pitcher over, or takes a bat upside your buddy's head here and runs off with the money. So long story short, I'm doing a dime down in county. So maybe if anyone wants to send me a birthday cake with a file or an angle grinder, and I'd really appreciate a hand up here.
I thought you weren't allowed by children anymore.
Well, this is a learning opportunity for these kids,
Yeah, I suppose so. I suppose so. Children, if you see a large man with a beard coming at you with a baseball bat, and you are, in fact, selling some sort of fruit-flavored sweetened beverage, just run. Just run inside.
There's no real charge called endangering youths. They trump that up on me, and I'm going to beat this rap.
I wish you all the best, my dear boy. All right, and that kind of brings us all the way around to our main topic tonight, and that is the classic Grand Theft Auto series. In particular, tonight we're going to be talking about the mainline series. As always, we've not really had any deep dives into side games. I think as we kind of gain more viewers and stuff like that, our listeners, we're going to kind of pursue some of the side stories. But this time around, we're going to be focusing solely on Grand Theft Auto 1, Grand Theft Auto 2, Grand Theft Auto 3, Grand Theft Auto Vice City, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So a lot of the side games, like the Vice City stories and Liberty City stories, we're going to save for another time. And we're not going to... Are you going to be talking about GTA 4? Or are we just stopping with San Andreas?
San Andreas.
Okay, so we're stopping with San Andreas. So really the PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 games. Obviously, these games have come out on a lot more systems after the fact. And one thing that you guys are going to probably find pretty interesting is how, looking at the sales numbers of these games, just like the way that the PS2 era games really blew up, and how just radically, I don't say radically different, but how different the original games were versus what we have as GTA experiences for now. So that being said, Jeremy, let's jump into our own experiences with these games. I'll deter it to you because you have a lot of time in the clink. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with maybe the first two, if any?
So the first two, the only memory I have of playing these was at a sleepover at one of my friend's house as a kid. And I can't remember if it was 1 or 2, but I remember we were just sitting up and playing it. And it must have been 2, because 2 is that when they introduced the phone booths and the actual missions, right?
Yeah, it's actually like different colored phone booths dictate the difficulty and stuff.
Right, yeah. And I didn't have a PlayStation 1 personally, so I just played it at my friend's house when I'd go over there to hang out. So a really limited experience with 2. Which, if you're unaware, 2 is kind of a top-down sort of adventure, or not adventure, but just like top-down shooter, maybe?
Yeah, it is. Both the first 2 are very much top-down, and I believe in the subsequent PS2 games, you can actually revert the camera to look like that. If I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think so. At least the third one. I remember doing it in the third one. Could be wrong. I could be just hallucinating that. But I remember that you could actually tilt the camera skywards or downwards from the sky to make it look like a top-down view, which was interesting because the gameplay for the later games is a lot different than the first two, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
And I honestly remember not playing Grand Theft Auto 3, and not until I was an adult actually making the connection that they were part of the same series.
And I think that's the big takeaway from these earlier games that we're going to get into is like a lot of people know and love the PS2 era games. Like, people our age really dig those. And obviously GTA 5 is one of the highest selling games of all time. I think it just pushed over 150 million copies. And I believe it is still the most expensive game ever developed. There's been talks, and I believe recently, in the last 2 weeks or so, we're recording in mid-February right now, that GTA 6 was officially confirmed to be in development. I know they've been pushing out a lot of DLC for like the online and stuff like that, just to kind of keep people at bay. But I know a lot of people that are fans of the GTA series are getting a little stir-crazy that it's just this regurgitation of GTA 5 over and over again. Because GTA 5, as amazing as it is, came out originally on the Xbox 360, PS3, then the PS4, Xbox One, and now they're going to be re-releasing it again on PS5 and Series X. So it's just like this roundabout way of continuing the money train for Rockstar, so to speak.
But let's forget about Red Dead Redemption Online.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not salty at all.
You're not salty?
Not at all.
Is it just? I mean, I don't really have a ton of experience with the Red Dead Online stuff. I mean, I think I played it one time. Like, I just got off my horse and I got shot in the head from down yonder by the corral. So, wasn't a huge fan.
It's actually, I don't know. You kind of have to make your own fun with it. Think of kind of Minecraft. There's stuff to do, but it's a lot of grind. But I don't know. I got into it right around the time I started actually getting into westerns and stuff as an adult. And it's cool to just ride around with your bros and wrangle up people. But I think a big part of it is maybe why a lot of people necessarily don't get into it is just that it's not getting a lot of support from Rockstar, say as much as Grand Theft Auto Online. But that's an argument for a different day, I guess.
And speaking of the same terms that we kind of left Kirby off on, with Kirby being the Wendy's of Nintendo, would you say that since Rockstar has become such like this ultimate development company, they're really top dog now, would you consider them the Dwayne "The Rock" the Johnson of video game developers? I mean, think about it. I think Rockstar is probably.
I would love to disagree and make this a more interesting debate topic, but The Rock has really branched out into a lot of different forms of media. Does he have a rap album or a music career? I think that's the only thing that you could say. Macho Man Randy Savage wrestled. He was in Spider-Man, and he does have an awesome album out.
Well, The Rock did sing a rap R&B song on one of the WWF albums from the early 2000s, so I can absolutely send that to you.
Okay. Yes, I would very much like to listen to it.
Of course. So any other, let's just kind of do a general reflection on what these series are. Obviously, when we stop at all of the games, we can kind of reflect on them, but what's your overall impression of the Grand Theft Auto series?
As far as what they are, media-wise, or?
No, I mean, what do you think they mean to you and mean to the greater gaming world?
Well, I would say the biggest thing is they're really revolutionary when it comes to open world. They were probably the first big hit where you're not playing in a linear fashion, but you can go out and explore the world, at least the third one, and just kind of find all these little nooks and crannies, and you're not just doing mission after mission.
Right, yeah, I think especially the third one really just broke the mold, to quote Smash Mouth, not all shooting stars break the mold. Well, in this case, Grand Theft Auto 3 did. So, that being said, I think my general reflection on the Grand Theft Auto series is it's a pretty important series in my life. I think I've beaten all of the Grand Theft Auto classic ones, not the first or second one, and we'll talk about that. But GTA 3, GTA Vice City, San Andreas, 5, I've beaten twice. So I've sunk in a lot of my teenage years into these games, despite the chagrin of the public media outcry about these games. I think in a way the controversy behind these games actually helped it out quite significantly. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about the controversy, but it's just if you haven't played the GTA series, I don't know what you're doing. There's something for everybody with these games, especially like the fifth one is really open-ended and user-friendly. I think. I mean, this isn't the GTA 5 focused episode, but I just love the fifth game. Like I said, I've beaten it twice. The fifth
game was huge. That it really brought everything to a next level too.
Yeah, it absolutely did. So,
did you? I think we just get into the controversy of the game right now before we get into the story. So obviously, the game is about crime, and there's sex, drugs, murder, theft, everything like that. Reid, did you have any issues getting your parents to buy you a copy of Grand Theft Auto?
I don't remember if I did or not. I don't think my parents really cared because it was just like me kind of staying out of their hair. So I remember distinctly, and I was going to bring this up during Vice City, but I'll just say it now. I remember I was in 7th grade when Vice City came out. And I was during Christian confirmation time. and I distinctly I remember telling my dad, hey, this game's coming out that I really want to get. Can you go get it for me? And that night I had confirmation meeting, practice, class, whatever. And I got in the car with my dad. I was really excited. He's like, oh, sorry, they're all sold out. And I got really sad. And then he opened up the dash console and he had a copy for me. So I remember that vividly to this day.
He got you real good.
He got me real good. That's the only dad joke time he's ever done in his life. So
you went straight from Christian confirmation to picking up sex workers and beating them to death with a baseball bat.
Correct. And I think with San Andreas, I would have been about 15. And I remember for that one, I don't remember how I got it. I was obviously able to get it, but I remember the first copy I bought, I moved my PS2 while the disc was playing, and it got a crack on the center.
Rip.
Yeah, but I returned it to GameStop saying, oh, it stopped working. And they gave me another copy, so I broke it, but to their chagrin, they gave me another copy. But yeah, no, super, super important game for me growing up. I mean, I just love the humor of the classic era stuff. I mean, there's so many just funny radio stations and stuff like that, and maybe we'll talk about that as we kind of get into it. I think we're spoiling a lot of stuff without actually getting into the nitty-gritty.
That's fair.
Of it. So should we start with the first game?
I would say so.
All right. So as always, we're going to kind of talk about the games in question. Kind of I don't want to say gloss over, but talk a little bit about the plot points of each of these games. Maybe talk about if they're connected. Again, that's an important part about talking about these franchises. Talking about the characters and locations, and just general themes and inspirations is really my goal for this. So looking at the first game, Grand Theft Auto, as you can imagine, is the first title. Originally developed by DMA Design, which would eventually become Rockstar North. It was also co-developed by Tarantula Studios, which eventually became Rockstar Lincoln. And I didn't know this until I started researching for this series that these companies, Rockstar, was originally based in England. I always assumed that it was some wild, developer from the West Coast or something. But no, it's actually a company that originated in England, which I thought was really interesting. And it was published by BMG Interactive and ACS Games, and I believe one of those eventually became Take-Two Interactive. So as you can see with the first game, it doesn't really have that Rockstar vibe or stamp with it yet. I mean, these developers would eventually become Rockstar Studios. But anyway, the platforms that this was originally released for was PC, and I think this is, I don't remember, you mentioned how you had played Grand Theft Auto or Grand Theft Auto 2 at a friend's house, and I have a very similar experience with one of these games. I believe it was also the second one. I remember playing it at my cousin's house really briefly, and since it just kind of drops you into this environment, there's not a lot of narrative, there's not a lot of cutscenes and stuff. It just drops you into the game and you just play this game. The first two games really are more just action-oriented games. There's not a lot of plot. It's just kind of this drive a car around, do this mission. There's not a lot to it, but this game, Grand Theft Auto, originally was released on PC, PS1, and Game Boy Color, which I thought was interesting. The PC version originally came out in February of 1998, and the PS1 version, which came out in June of 1998. The Game Boy Color version, for whatever reason, came out over a year and a half later, in November of 1999. So, looking at the first Grand Theft Auto game, like I said, it is playing in a top-down perspective. I think the original plan for this game and some of the background behind why they wanted to create this is that there's two brothers, and I should probably look this up. There's two brothers that were in charge of like the masterminds of the Grand Theft Auto series, and essentially what they were saying is we're inspired by a lot of these like 90s crime movies, 80s crime movies. We want to make a game that's going to kind of push the envelope. And I know Rockstar's gone on to say before that they don't want to make first-person shooters. They don't want to make what everyone else is making. So in a way, this series, this game in particular, is sort of a proof of concept for what they would eventually do in later games. So as I said before, this is a top-down game, and you can choose from a number of characters. You're not stuck with a character like you are in Vice City or San Andreas or any of the other ones. But you can actually choose different characters that don't really have a huge impact on the story. And how it really works is you go around Liberty City, which is like the main city in Grand Theft Auto 3 and 4, and which is essentially like a hodgepodge of like New York City, maybe a little bit of Chicago. You also do go to Vice City, which is a recreation of Miami. And you also do go to San Andreas, which is like the Bay Area of San Francisco in California and LA. So it's interesting that in the first game, they actually kind of predict or set the tone for what the other games are going to be solely based in. They did release expansion packs to this game. They released an expansion pack, Grand Theft Auto 69, London 69, in April of 1999. And then just a few months later, they released London 61, which, as far as I know, is probably like the most obscure Rockstar Grand Theft Auto game, London 61. They're more or less just mission packs, expansion packs to the game. They don't add a ton different. It just takes place in 1960s London, so it's sort of inspired by like James Bond and the Avengers and stuff like that. But Grand Theft Auto 1 does take place in 1997. It takes place when the game was sort of developed and released. And just like I said, I can run down through the plot points because what you essentially do is you kind of work your way from city to city. You start in Liberty City, you move on to San Andreas, and then you move to Vice City. And how it works is you're in this top-down perspective, and you have kind of tank controls, which are really uncomfortable. I know that's a big thing that happened a lot in the late 90s, is people were still trying to figure out how to do controls well, especially for shooters and action games. So this is really before the, I guess, proliferation of dual-shot controls, which really became, the standard for any shooting game. So it's just kind of interesting to see how this game kind of plays out. I honestly, it's on the PlayStation Classic, and I don't think it holds up super well. I know it might be bad to say. But anyway, let me kind of take a step back, and let's talk a little bit about what happens at each of these locations. So starting with Liberty City, the main mission that you start off with is called Gangsta Bang. So you, the player, start off in Liberty City and begin to work for Robert Bubby Saragliano's gang. They have the player complete several jobs ranging from stealing taxis to killing the LCPD police via car bomb. They also have you assassinate lawyer of a rival Cinetti gang. One mission also involves a trap in the form of a bomb on a bus that will blow up if it gets below 50 miles an hour. Obviously, like I said before, huge reference to other 90s movies, including Speed. So once the player has enough points, that's the interesting thing about Grand Theft Auto 1 and 2, is like you're trying to accumulate points, just like an old school arcade game. But anyway, once the player has enough points, Don Cinetti's right-hand man, Kabat, contacts the player wishing to speak with him or her. Upon meeting him, he claims the player double-crossed Baldman Cinetti and is a dead man if it happens again. So again, the story is very just like cut and dry mobster style.
Which is kind of the first few games in general, I would say.
Yeah, even
a lot of really cliche gangster movie stuff.
Yeah, even the third one is very much like this. It's just done in a better perspective.
I would say even all the way up to Vice City is still very.
I think so.
I mean, it expands on it a little bit more, but it's still very like Goodfellas, that kind of, very stereotypical gangster kind of thing.
Yep, absolutely. And then the next mission in Liberty City is called Heist Almighty. Once again, the player must do several jobs to complete the level and get to San Andreas. Right away, Bubby calls saying Sasha has been kidnapped. Failing the mission will reveal that Sasha is actually the boss's puppy. The player can choose to rescue her or fail it. If the player fails the mission, the cops find and bring her in. For someone heard her scream in a trunk. Once the player does some jobs, including killing Cinetti, and has enough points again, Bubby will ask the player to come see him. Bubby will say the player did a good job, but the cops are close enough to look up his ass with a flashlight. Bubby, in an effort to get rid of the unneeded police attention, booked the player a flight to San Andreas. So again, very cliche stuff in the second half of the Liberty City mission. So let's move on to San Andreas. Mandarin Mayhem. Upon arriving to San Andreas, the player is contacted by Uncle Fu's gang and begins to work for them. Once the player does enough work and gets enough points, they can see the old man. He is building a crime syndicate of extraordinary magnitude, and the player honors his family. Isn't that like extraordinary magnitude? Isn't that what the Kentucky Fried Movie guy says again? Like, you are a man of extraordinary magnitude, something like that. Like,
I think it might be.
I think it might be directly that.
Yeah, we'll just have to rewatch it again.
Oh yes, I would be. If you guys have not seen Kentucky Fried Movie, do yourself a favor. So that's yeah, I think that is actually it. He's building a crime syndicate of extraordinary magnitude, and the player honors his family. Yeah, I think that's the line from Kentucky Fried Movie. Anyway, on to the next mission in San Andreas. After working for Uncle Fu, you do Tequila Slammer. Now the player works for El Burro. Once the player does enough jobs...
The donkey. Well, two things. A, the donkey is his name, which is funny. And also, B, Tequila Slammer is usually my Saturday nights.
Okay, yeah. When you're not harassing children with lemonade stands. No
Yes.
comment? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Talk to my lawyer.
So burro is, like you said, it's donkey in Spanish. So is burrito like small donkey? Because doesn't ito like mean small? I could be wrong. I don't speak Spanish.
I know burro is donkey. This concludes my knowledge of the Spanish language.
Okay, moving on. I don't want to get people in our amazing fans in Spanish-speaking countries mad at us. Once the player does enough jobs, pleases him, and gets enough points, he'll ask them to come over to his place. The player did good work for him, and he's grateful. Now he's going to return the favor. He's going to reward the player personal this time. And then it moves on to Vice City. So the first chapter in the last area of Grand Theft Auto 1 is called Bent Cop Blues. A cop named Samuel Deaver calls the player because apparently they screwed up somewhere. The player works for him now. Following the same routine, once the player gets enough points, they can go see a very angry demon. If the player crosses him again, they're screwed for life, if they even have a life after. So not a lot of explanation for Bent Cop Blues. So the final chapter of Grand Theft Auto is Rasta Blasta, which sounds like, Baja Blast. I don't know. It sounds like a Taco Bell Mountain Dew flavor. Like, I don't know.
It's a combo meal.
I don't know what you could make like for a Jamaican flavored
jerk chicken tacos and Baja
I was
Blast.
Seriously thinking like jerk chicken and like rice and beans or something delicious.
That does sound great though.
Fried plantains. Anyway. All right, so Rasta Blasta. I think it's Rasta Blasta.
No, I think it's Rasta Blasta, man.
Okay, Rasta Blasta, man. Now I'm gonna get sued. Now the player works for Brother Marcus. Most jobs involve killing. When the player gets enough points to go see him, Brother Marcus is proud and apparently thinks the player's done well. And that's it. That's really it. As you can sort of see, you start off with one of these crime bosses, and you gain enough points by boosting cars and killing cops that you can advance the level. You can advance the game once you get to a certain point threshold. And
who doesn't love points?
Right, and that is Grand Theft Auto 1, which did sell 3 million copies, which for a first outing, that's pretty solid. Especially in the late 90s, there's a lot of games coming out. So yeah, that's Grand Theft Auto 1.
In your experience, was this probably one of the first games where you're just randomly committing crimes and doing things like this? I can't think of a lot before that where there's things where you're shooting people, but you're definitely the antagonist. You know what I mean? Yeah,
there's definitely games where you play like that Punisher game for the arcade, like you're a good guy beating up bad guys, but this time it's kind of like you're this bad guy.
You're purely a criminal,
Purely a criminal. I don't remember many games where you play necessarily as the bad guy. I don't know. I'd have to look up when the game Driver came out. Let me do that really quick while we're on here. That game kind of came out on the same... Nope, it came out 1999, so that game was probably inspired heavily by Grand Theft Auto. So
yeah, same thing with like Saints Row. That would have been inspired by... Wasn't there one old Atari game or maybe even a NES game where you're like a biker?
You're talking like Road Rash?
Yeah.
Road Rash isn't necessarily like you're playing a bad guy. You're just doing like outlaw.
Oh yeah, you're right. I thought there was one where you you were on a motorcycle and you had a chain. You beat the crap out of other people.
Yeah, that's Road Rash.
That is Road Rash. Okay,
Dude, Road Rash 3 is my jam.
but I mean, even in that, like, that would just be you implying that bikers are like gun running criminals and not, 37-year-old lawyers trying to relive their glory days.
Yeah, I suppose. So that's Grand Theft Auto 1, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said, what's cool about it is that it does introduce the areas of what we know as Grand Theft Auto, like Vice City and San Andreas and Liberty City. But again, I tried to really dig more into the story of this, but that's it. This is it. And like I said before, as you can imagine with London 69 and London 61, which were just add-on mission packs, it's really the same stuff. You're just doing missions for some characters in London during the 1960s. So it's a solid game. I mean, I think it stands... it's fine for what it is. I don't think a lot of people go back to this game for nostalgia's sake, because it's the controls are kind of tough to manage sometimes. I think that's the biggest complaint, is that it's just the mechanics have not aged well, so to speak. So that is GTA 1. Are we ready to move on to GTA 2, or do you have any...
I would think so. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I played GTA 2, and it was very limited. I just remember like running people over with cars and stuff. So yeah, breeze on through GTA 2, and then we'll get on to the big daddies.
All right, let's get through GTA 2. So the developers this time around, oh my goodness, it's DMA Design and Tarantula Studios again. However, at this point, Rockstar became its own thing, so this is the first game in the series that is published by Rockstar proper. It was released on PS1 and PC on October of 1999, so right before Millennium, and it was released on Dreamcast. Sorry, not GameCube. It was released on Dreamcast in May of 2000, which I think was really interesting. This is the only Grand Theft Auto game on a Sega platform. It was released then later in 2000 on Christmas for the Game Boy Color. So it's very similar to Grand Theft Auto 1. However, it does take place in a retro-futuristic setting. According to like the game label, it takes place quote-unquote 3 weeks into the future. However, there are a few police logs that you can look at where it states that it's the year 2013. So largely, while the first game takes place in the modern day back then of 1997, 1998, this is supposed to take place in some sort of futuristic setting. And just like Grand Theft Auto 1, you do missions for crime syndicates. And what's interesting about this is that when you're doing these missions for these different crime gangs, it has different colors for what payphones that you can pick up. I think you were mentioning this earlier, is that it has a system where you pick up missions via payphone. Like you get out of your car or whatever, and you go to the payphone to pick up a job. And like green is obviously easy, medium is yellow, and wait, where is it? Yeah, easy, green, medium, yellow, and I think red, which is very, very hard. So as you can imagine, it's like the color markers on salsa, mild, medium, hot, very, very similar. So for completing a mission, you earn money, respect, and money multiplier. So multiplier being that if you continue your life, you don't die, you can earn more money and stuff like that. It takes place in a place called Anywhere City, USA. So this is like a non-canonical addition to the series. It's called literally Anywhere City, USA. So there's
where I grew up.
Yeah, Anywhere City, USA. Sounds like a John Mellencamp song. Sucking on chili dogs. We've covered enough chili dogs in this podcast already. But it takes place in 3 different zones in Anywhere City. It takes place in a commercial zone, and I believe that's where you start. It allows a maximum wanted level of 4, which results in a SWAT team chasing after you. Then you can unlock the residential area. The residential district has a wanted level of 5 in the PC version, with FBI agents pursuing you, the protagonist. And in the PS1 version, there's 6 stars, so the army will actually chase after you. So it looks like the PC version might be a little bit easier this time. And finally, in both versions, you unlock finally the industrial area, where the maximum wanted level is 6, where people are going to be chasing you with tanks and stuff like that. So it's a pretty crazy time. But just like how you sort of unlock different areas in Grand Theft Auto 1, being Vice City, San Andreas, and Liberty City, I think it's kind of going backwards, because you're just in one city. Granted, it's pretty big, but it's just 3 zones in one city. I think this game
did more to develop actually picking up missions. And I think that's where this game made more of a leap. Because I don't remember, I don't think there were phone booths and stuff in the first game. It was just, you got enough points, now you get a tad bit of story, move on to the next zone.
Right. And the retro-futuristic setting is kind of odd. I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't just kind of continue. There's, as far as I know, there's no continuity between this and the first game. It's just really more of the same. A little bit better. The graphics are a little sharper. And I think people generally remember this a little bit more fondly because it is plays a little bit better. But again, going back to this game after the fact, it's dated. It's dated pretty strongly. And just looking at sales numbers, GTA 2 total sales was 2 million. So it actually sold a little bit less than GTA 1. But I have to take into consideration maybe some of that 3 million for the first game included some of the expansion packs and stuff. So I don't know. But this one, it seems like this one was slightly better received, but it didn't sell as well. So it's interesting to see how they make the leap in the following year to GTA 3. So before we jump into GTA 3, which is the next game in the series, is there anything you want to say about GTA 3? Other than its terrible timing release.
GTA, you said 3, you mean 2?
No, we just talked about 2.
Oh, there was no story for you to add to 2.
No, there really isn't.
Okay.
You just play missions for different crime members, and that's...
Okay.
Again, it's very simple. There's not a lot of, rolling dialogue. I think what's interesting about the second game is they made like a quote-unquote movie where they have like live-action scenes.
Right.
I don't know if it's before or after the game, but it's just an action game, really. It doesn't have like this branching narrative that we're so fond of. But GTA 3, we can move on if you'd like.
Absolutely. So, GTA 3 is going to make the biggest jump probably in the series that we're going to cover, being that it converts it from a top-down to a full 3D open world where there's an actual story, you've got cutscenes and everything like that. I played a ton of this game growing up. I am surprised that I was allowed to play this when I was that young.
Was it something where your parents just kind of let you just have it, or?
I got my PlayStation 2 with a bunch of games. I think my mom bought it off eBay from like a combined Christmas birthday present kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of why I asked you about if you ever had any troubles getting a copy of a Grand Theft Auto game, because I kind of slipped GTA in, and it wasn't until San Andreas where my mom threw a stink about buying me the game. So I got Vice City just fine, and then I wanted San Andreas, and I'm not sure if she heard it from another mom or something, but she realized what you can do in the games and was just freaking out and thinking that it was destroying me and turning me into just this horrible psychopath. So I had to convince one of my friend's older siblings to take me to Walmart and buy it, like, basically have me give them the money and buy it for them, or for me, so...
Yeah, I think it was something. I don't even remember how I got this game. I think it might have actually been my neighbor who bought it for me because he owned it and he was like the cool older neighbor. Shout out to Ty Fisher if you're out there. Because he let me play it at his house and he didn't slip anything into my drink or anything.
That's good.
I mean, I would have been I think 11 because I think. Did you get the
2001 for GTA 3?
Do you remember specifically what month this came out in?
October, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, isn't that great timing with what happened the month prior?
Never forget.
Never forget. I sure won't. But yeah, let's jump into GTA 3.
GTA 3 sold 14.5 million copies as of March 2008. So a pretty substantial jump from the first two. Came out on PS2, PC, and Xbox, so the major console there. So GTA's story will take place in after the event of San Andreas, after our main character, Claude, loses his garage to CJ in a race. CJ being the main character from San Andreas.
Does it say that he's CJ in GTA 3? Or is this like a flashback from San Andreas?
So Claude makes an appearance in San Andreas.
I remember that.
And so that there's a little race that happens there. And that's basically when Claude hands over his assets to CJ. And then him and his girlfriend Catalina move to Liberty City from there. So GTA this game actually takes place after the events of San Andreas.
Gotcha.
During a burglary, Claude is betrayed by his accomplices, Catalina and Miguel. As Claude is being transported to prison, the vehicle is ambushed and the attackers rescue their target. Claude and his new friend 8-Ball make their escape. 8-Ball is a wonderful name for a character in this game, by the way.
Yeah, I liked 8-Ball. Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, he was pretty cool. So 8-Ball introduces Claude to the leader of the Leon family, Salvatore Leon, for who he begins working. While working with the Leons, he discovers Catalina and Miguel are now running the Liberty City cartel and will eventually meet Salvatore's wife, Maria, who he later helps out of a bad situation. This event would lead to Salvatore incorrectly assuming that Claude and Maria are having an affair, causing Salvatore to unsuccessfully attempt a hit on Claude. Do you remember that mission at all?
Oh, I'd have to, honestly, dude. It's been 21 years.
So I remember that mission pretty distinctly because I don't know what it is, but there is something inside of me, even when I like personally see something coming where you're being betrayed, but it enrages me to my core.
Yeah. I remember distinctly,
like anytime in a video where someone rats you out or stabs you in the back, like I will go out of my way to get them. I don't know what it is. You play Mass Effect and have like the person you're romancing die. It does not make me as mad as someone betraying me.
Sure. I remember, this is a side note, I remember getting this game. I don't know if I got it at launch, unlike the other ones in the future, but I remember getting this game and I would take the booklet to school with me. Because like this is back when booklets were a thing, right?
Yeah.
Because it had a list of all the gangs and stuff like that, like this, what is it,
the triads, the Leons, the Yakuza, the cartel.
Yep, and I used to like draw all of like the logos in my notebook.
You're so hardcore, man.
Yeah, it was so hardcore listening to my Corn and Mudvayne music. No idea.
My favorite thing about those booklets was the huge map they always came with.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was really cool. Anyways, leaving the family behind, Claude begins working with the Yakuza after proving his loyalty by assassinating Salvatore. Through a corrupt officer, Claude meets Donald Love, who convinces Claude to aid him in starting a gang war between the Yakuza and the cartel to lower real estate prices in Liberty City. While working for Love, Claude encounters Catalina and Miguel once again. During the exchange, Catalina shoots Miguel and escapes. Catalina lures Claude into a trap by kidnapping Maria. After fighting through the ambush and tracking down the actual location Maria is being held, Claude fights through one last batch of cartel guards and shoots down Catalina's helicopter as she tries to escape. As the pair leave the scene, the screen fades to black, with Maria's talking ended by a gunshot. Yeah, that basically is the whole story of Grand Theft Auto 3. Again, pretty straightforward gangster type stuff. My only thing is, I think it would have been more interesting if there would have actually been a little bit of actual chemistry between Maria and Claude, because it's never outright stated that there was an affair or that they actually did anything to warrant him getting in trouble. And then kind of at the end, it shoehorns in this sort of them being together. I think there would have been a little bit better for there to be some build up in that relationship and then an actual reason for Salvatore to actually attempt to kill him.
And in this game, again, it's been 21 years since I've played this, but you have all these other games like the Yakuza and the Cartel. Do you do missions for them, or you just do missions against them? I don't remember.
You start out working for the Leons, and you do missions against other smaller gangs.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
The Leons are kind of have lost a lot of their power at this point in Liberty City.
And they're basically like the mob, the Italian mob.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're very stereotypical Italian mob. Anything you'd see in an old gangster movie. And you're doing missions against, I think they're the Triads and a couple other ones that are at that level, maybe slightly above, to kind of make them lose power.
Okay.
Once they try to assassinate Claude, he moves on and kind of goes up the ladder to the Yakuza, which is one of the larger gangs. And then from there, after doing some missions with them, that's when he meets up with this other character who's kind of a corrupt corporate entity, maybe even making some statement about, like, some political statement about capitalism, and basically he's just pulling the strings of the gangs to try to increase or decrease the real estate values of the area. And then you work with him for a little bit. So Claude really kind of bounces around and doesn't ever find a home with any of these gangs.
Yeah, that's what I remember is that you play as Claude, who's this silent protagonist. He's, I think, the last silent protagonist because the other characters moving forward are very, very strong personalities. And you're not really a member of any one of these gangs per se. You just essentially work for them when you need to. And you just kind of play around and you're kind of a gun for hire in a lot of ways, I think is the best way to explain it. And I remember, and to be clear, people that are listening that have not played these games, especially like the PS2 era on, there's a lot more to these games other than just the story. There's obviously like ambulance missions you can do, taxi missions you can do, rampages that you can do. So there's a lot of free activity, free other activities.
You just drive a tank around all day and run from the cops. That's what I did for 90% of my life.
I was trying to think if I could still remember the codes. It's like R1, R1, R2, L2, up, down, left, right, up, down, left, right.
I can't tell you how relieved I am that you also don't remember the codes for this.
But it's just like muscle memory. Like, I'm sure if like I did it one time, I'd get it again.
Absolutely, yeah. But I was just like, oh, how embarrassed am I going to be when I tell Reid I don't remember how to give like the codes for all the guns.
This is something where you'd get like a piece of computer paper from downstairs and you'd write.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and you'd write them down once you go on.
Yeah, I had them all printed off, and so like, because that was I didn't play a ton of the story in here. Most of my time was just spent like, give myself all the guns, give myself maximum wanted level. How much want and destruction can I unleash on this city? I know I eventually did beat it, but it was probably after I played Vice City. I didn't get to the second island by doing the missions. I had to do that little glitch where you could jump the island.
Yeah.
But it was still a lot of fun and a really good game to kind of just a good catharsis.
Yeah, it is a good catharsis. And that's, I think, where a lot of the controversy came from. Is there was that, I remember back in the day, there was that lawyer, was it Jack Thompson, who was always kind of coming after this game saying it's really corrupting the youth. It was like Mortal Kombat all over again, saying how this is a murder simulator, I think was some of the terms that they threw around, and how, this was sort of the readdressing of the efficacy of the ESRB and giving kids harmful things. But in the reality, I think the GTA games reasserted the idea that you need to be 17, 18 to buy these games or rent these games. Because this is when you'd start seeing family video stickers, must be 18 to rent.
Yeah, actually, from the research I did, this game was cited for being the reason that Walmart required you to be 18 to buy a mature rated game.
Okay, so there you go. Perfect.
So yeah, it brought a lot of mature themes to gaming, which I don't think necessarily were there in the public, at least. There were a lot of maybe smuttier games kind of underneath, but this was a massive game that a lot of people played that brought these adult themes out.
Right. Yeah, and I think with this game, too, there's a lot of violence, absolutely, but I think it's kind of comical now.
Absolutely.
I mean, This isn't... I mean, back then, this was like the most realistic game ever looking, most realistic game ever. But
yeah, it really was.
It really was. I remember seeing the ads. I'm like, oh man, that looks so crazy. But I don't know. Going back and playing this game, it's just so goofy. It's such a goofy game. Like the radio, like having all stock music, and like the radio hosts on like the talk channels. Just being
I was gonna say the talk channels are always my favorite because they're just funny to listen to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if this is the first one with radio channels. Maybe it was in the second one. I don't remember. But I mean, I think this. I don't remember. I think 3 might have been the first one because again, you have the capacity on the discs to do this now.
Right.
And I think that becomes such a essential part of the Grand Theft Auto experience. Is just listening to some rap or some metal or something and just kind of zooming around. It's so fun.
And that's the thing that's really nice is they had music for everyone, right? Yeah. Like there was a bunch of different stations with a bunch of different styles of music. It's not just this is the soundtrack of the game, but in a way that I think kind of mirrors what they were looking for in this open world experiences. You play it your way.
Right.
You listen to the music you want to listen to. You do the missions at your pace. Everything to the extent that they can do at this point in time is in your control.
And as we might have mentioned before, this is like before open world games were the norm. So when this game came out with the graphics that it had and the environment and just freedom of things, it was just, groundbreaking. It really was.
Absolutely.
And it really set the mold for the future games. It really set if you want to consider GTA 3 anything, it's the blueprint of the success to come. So that being said, I think we can move on to Vice City if you want to.
Let's move to some warmer climes. Grand Theft Auto Vice City came out October 29th, 2002 on all the major platforms, PlayStation 2, Xbox, and PC. Vice City mirrors a 1980s Miami, full of neon lights, bad Hawaiian shirts, and of course, drugs. The story follows Tommy Vercetti, recently released from a 15-year prison sentence, and known as the Harwood Butcher. Tommy Vercetti is sent to Vice City to establish a foothold for his boss, Sonny Forelli, of the Forelli crime family. During his initial deal with Ken Rosenberg and the Vance brothers, Vince and Lance, things go south as they are attacked. With the money and product lost, in addition to the deceased Vince Vance, Tommy begins his foray into Vice City's underbelly. In the process of dealing with many of the city's less than respectable denizens, Tommy re-encounters Lance, who joins his efforts to seek vengeance for his brother. The pair eventually meet with Ricardo Diaz, who they begin to work for and soon find out is responsible for the death of Vincent. Unable to be convinced to keep a cool head and take a methodical approach, Lance heads off to deal with Diaz alone, causing Tommy to have to step in and save Lance when he is subsequently captured by Diaz's men. Working together, the pair attack Diaz at his mansion, killing him. Tommy then takes Diaz's assets, declaring himself Kingpin of Vice City. Tommy's newfound status goes to his head as he begins to ostracize his allies and refuse to pay the Forelli family their cut of the money. Sonny sends men to take out Tommy, but they are unsuccessful, so the two agree upon a peaceful meeting where Tommy will pay Sonny what he is owed. Unknown to Lance, Tommy has flipped sides and informs Sonny that the money is actually counterfeit. During the final showdown in the mansion, Tommy discovers Lance's betrayal and kills him, and that Sonny was in fact responsible for Tommy going to prison 15 years ago. Enraged, Tommy takes on all of Sonny's men before finally taking out Sonny himself, becoming the owner of Vice City.
Yeah, I remember that the end of the game, you essentially fight in the Scarface mansion.
Yes, this game is basically Scarface the game. Before Scarface the game came out, which if you've never played was actually like my whole senior year of high school.
I never played that one. I played a lot of the Godfather the game. You play that one?
I do remember the Godfather the game. I really like the Scarface one though.
I'll have to check that out if I can find a copy.
Yeah.
GTA Vice City is, I think, a lot of people's favorite GTA.
I can see it.
Yeah, I mean the entire saturation of like the HUD and everything, like just the screen. There's always some sort of like lens flare, and it's got this nice soft pink and yellow and blue tint and hue to it. And I think it's a really beautiful game for what it was back then. Obviously, it hasn't necessarily, the original version hasn't really held up graphic wise, but I mean, I think what's so cool about it was just the whole environment, how it was. Even more so than Grand Theft Auto 3 has that really direct connection to something like Scarface, Miami Vice, Magnum PI, all those really great 80s action crime shows. Just top to bottom, an awesome game. I remember like the difficulty is, were planes and stuff still difficult to fly in this, or were they a little bit better?
I think they were even hard to fly in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas.
No, San Andreas, once you got your flying skill up, yeah, you could.
Okay, that's right. No. Planes were still impossible to fly in this game, yes.
Right, and I remember we didn't talk about it, but GTA 3 had the Dodo, which had the clipped wings. Oh, man. Like, you could fly it, and I think they did that on purpose. I think the developers did that on purpose, just to kind of screw with people, but...
Oh, I'm sure.
Obviously with... was there a specific year this took place? Was it like 84? Was it 1984?
86 was the exact year, yeah. One thing I did notice, in kind of researching these... Maybe with the exception of GTA 4, but it seems like there's a pattern of one game kind of maybe pushes new grounds, the next game refines it, then that next game pushes new grounds, right? So like your Grand Theft Auto 1 was the introducing everyone to the violence and chaos and mayhem. GTA 2 kind of tightens things up. GTA 3 brings us to a 3D open world game. Vice City tightens things up again. And then Grand Theft Auto San Andreas adds that RPG element that we'll get into later. I'm not sure if you agree with that.
No, I think that's a really good assessment. I think that this one does capitalize on a lot of what made GTA 3 good, but made it better.
Absolutely.
I think like the combat is a bit better. The fact that you can get more weapons in this. I think you could have...
Motorcycles, I think it had.
Motorcycles. Did it have helicopters? I think it did. Yeah, it did.
Yeah, and I think GTA 3 had you couldn't fly them, except I think there were a couple RC. Oh no, I think that was Vice City where it had the RC helicopters too. Yeah, let me just Google it.
Yeah, but yeah, it did add more vehicles. It added more weapons. I think the plot is a lot better, especially since Tommy Vercetti is a voiced character, and it was voiced by, was it Michael Madsen?
Ray Liotta.
Ray Liotta.
Yes.
Ray Liotta.
There was a lot of... This whole series is full of voice actors. I don't remember the names of anyone in particular, but I know GTA 3 had a bunch of guys from The Sopranos and stuff like that. But yeah, Ray Liotta was Tommy Vercetti.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah,
and that helps a lot, you know, when there's a voice you can kind of recognize and just adds to the whole effect of the game.
Right, and we're going to see with San Andreas, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, how there is a connection between all of these games, because like we'd mentioned, Jeremy had mentioned before with GTA 3, is that Claude is chased by CJ and like from San Andreas and all this other stuff. But one of the characters in this game actually has an appearance in San Andreas, so we see that there is a continuity. It's essentially like saying Vice City, Liberty City, and San Andreas are all living entities through time and space. And
Absolutely.
All of these things are happening within this imagined world of America, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. I mean, even that even happens between this and 3. There's a businessman, like cowboy businessman, I don't remember his name exactly, that you meet, who it turns out to be the guy that taught Robert Love, the billionaire business owner that wanted to create a gang war. He kind of was his mentor. And that guy is trying to do the same thing in Vice City, you know. So you can see these things just slowly web into each other and make a really interesting story.
Yeah, I don't think the narrative is as strong as it is in, say, San Andreas or the later games, but it does.
No.
This is really the first one where it really starts to come into its own. It goes from baby step to baby leap. I mean, this is a pretty strong step in the right direction, and it's amazing that they were able to construct such a game in just a year and a half, 2 years.
Yep. So, yeah, it was. Yeah. And it's kind of nice. The thing I like about this one is you do get to see your main character actually kind of win and take over. I do like that not all the games end the same way. You get to see the whole spectrum of the criminal syndicate, right? Some people just are looking to get away. This guy takes over.
Yeah. And I think in this game you can buy property. I think you can buy like 2 or 3 things. I do remember that. It's not nowhere near as huge as like the later games, but it starts to add, like you were just saying before, it starts to add these elements that are capitalized in later games. So, final reflections on Vice City.
It was great. I just remember driving around on my motorcycle listening to the Run Run to the Yayo song.
Yes, or...
well, I ran to the Yayo.
I remember the commercial specifically on TV was Flock of Seagulls. I ran so far away.
Yep, I remember that. I would say I don't remember the drugs being as big of a part in GTA 3. I guess there was one drug called Spank, or Spank or something like that in GTA 3. But like this game really made you aware that you were in the 80s.
Yes, this is like the distillation of every 80s movie trope that existed. It's the glitz and glam, it's the seedy underbelly, and it's just like this quintessential 80s experience. And I think that's really the goal of a lot of the GTA games. After I was just going to
say that
is that you condense everything about that time period or atmosphere into just this one experience. And my final reflection on this is a lot of people, like I said, say it's their favorite game in this classic series between 3, Vice City, and San Andreas. But this game has one glaring issue that I cannot get over even to this day. And that is that you cannot swim. You jump into the water, like within Grand Theft Auto 3, and you just die. You lose all your health and you die. And it doesn't matter how much health or armor that you have, you just die. And I think that's a wasted opportunity because you're in this Miami area. You're surrounded by water. And
absolutely.
Why can't you swim?
I understand why.
Why?
Just the ability to swim, but if you could go underwater, then you don't have to create a full underwater landscape. It saves on space.
But that's easy to do because you're just gonna have to render like the water effect on the surface.
Yeah, but do that in a year, dog.
Yeah, that's true. But still,
I mean,
swimming.
I do completely understand your point. I mean, you're in Florida. There could be a whole scuba diving and and all this other stuff. But it definitely, I wouldn't say it was rushed, but like they definitely just made this game in a year. You know,
they did a really good job with the time they had.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's amazing you can be able to like play this game.
I almost forgot this game. Vice City sold 17.5 million copies as of March 2008.
Okay, so 17 million.
It beat Grand Theft Auto 3 by 3 million.
Yeah, so pretty solid numbers for sure. And I really think that this is the time where people are getting the hype. I mean, I think with GTA 3, people were really getting on the bandwagon, but I think really with Vice City, this is like 2002, like you said. This is really when like Scarface was becoming popular again. You remember that?
You mean the movie that I watched like at least once a week for 2 years?
Oh god, a pelican, fly, pelican. Yeah, no, God, I love that movie. I watched it like a year ago. It's still so good.
It's a great movie.
Yeah,
Al Pacino,
anyway.
man.
So, are we good with Vice City? We can move on to San Andreas.
Absolutely. Hit her up.
Right. So we're moving on to, as you could probably imagine, my favorite of these series, and that would be Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So at this time, as of I think was Vice City released by Rockstar North and Rockstar Games at this point?
Yes.
Yeah, I believe that after GTA 3, it was Rockstar and Rockstar. I want to say maybe.
I can look it up real quick. Sorry.
Sure, I think no, it's okay. I think GTA 3.
The producers is always something I forget to look up.
I think GTA 3 was still developed by DMCA, which did eventually, like I said before, become
Rockstar North.
DMA Rockstar North, which I think is still like the it's like Rockstar North, Rockstar. I don't think Rockstar Lincoln exists anymore. I think it's like Rockstar North and Rockstar. I don't remember. I'd have to look it up. It doesn't really matter. But again, Rockstar's a huge company now, as you can imagine. But anyway, San Andreas, Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Rockstar North was the developer, and of course published by their own company, Rockstar Games, released in October 2004. And in terms of platforms, I remember it originally released on PC and PS2. This is the system that I bought it for. A year later, it was released on Xbox, which I thought was blasphemy because this is a PS2 series. But eventually, this game basically gets released on every platform. Handheld. You can get this on iOS and Android now. It re-released on PS3 and PS4. Like, there's a lot of reissues of San Andreas. But again, originally, like the other few, mainly came out on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation. So, sorry, GameCube owners, you're going to have to play something else. So,
yeah. Go play Mario Sunshine.
Go play Mario Sunshine, or like, I don't know, Geist. That's a deep cut. So, jumping off the sales side of things, how many did you say was Vice City sales?
17.5 million.
Oh, yeah? Well, this game sold 27 million. Yeah. So this game... Yeah, really... I mean, that could be with a lot of the re-releases, too. I'm guessing it would probably be closer to like 18, 19 when it came out. But still, really good.
The numbers I had were of 2018 or 2008 anyways, so far beyond the lifespan of Vice City.
Right, so I'm sure that at this point there was probably some re-releases and definitive editions that came out. I remember this game got into some controversy for like the hot coffee mod. Do you remember that?
The hot coffee mod?
Yeah, that was like a mod that they found
sounds familiar.
They found a mod within the source code of, I think, the PS2 game or the PC game, I forget, that you could actually like simulate sex with someone. Like, you want to come in for coffee, and it was like really bad sexual.
Yes, I do remember that now.
Animation, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into the game. Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is really a tribute and love letter to sort of like the gangster crime movies of the early 90s and 1980s. Movies like Boys in the Hood, Casino, Con Air. Easy Rider was an inspiration for this game. Pulp Fiction, as you can imagine. There's a definite tribute to Terminator 2 and Training Day. So
Terminator 2?
Yeah, there's a chase scene that's very, very similar to these.
That's right.
Yeah, the semi-chase.
I think there's a very similar one in 5. I replayed 5, and there's a part where you're running down that tunnel with the semi. I'm just like, man, this makes me think of Terminator 2.
Who would have thought? Anyway, let's jump into the plot a little bit. I kind of glanced over a lot of the details of this, but I think you'll get the gist of it. So you play as Carl C.J. Johnson as the main character. So C.J. is a former gangbanger, and he returns home. I think he was in prison, or he came from somewhere. He came from another city. I forget. But he returns home after his mother's murdered, and he's trying to kind of pick up the pieces of what's going on in his neighborhood. He lives in Los Santos, which is a relatively poor part of town. I don't know if it's necessarily directly inspired by like Compton and the south side of LA or the east side of LA. I'm one of the.
I'm sure it's an amalgam of.
It's an amalgam of all these. I don't want to say
Yeah.
poor parts of LA, but rundown places in LA. He gets extorted by this cop squad essentially, which is led by Officer Tenpenny, which is played by the amazing Samuel L. Jackson, and he gets extorted by this police officer Tenpenny to help kind of weed out some issues that he's having because he's a corrupt cop. Otherwise, they're going to frame him for murder. So he does jobs for Tenpenny for a while, and he realizes that his former gang that he rolled with has lost a lot of its territory, so he kind of reluctantly joins up with them to help build up their street reputation again. And all along the way, he meets up with some of his former friends and stuff like that to kind of help him out with different things. I know there's one where he's trying to help his buddy who works at like a burger stand with his like rap career or something. So there's a lot of kind of funny tidbits with him and his gang, because all the while, I think what's interesting about CJ compared to the other characters is he's almost like, you can kind of empathize with him in a way because he's kind of reluctant to do a lot of this stuff. Anyway, so after a while, after doing kind of missions in the game, you eventually get sent out of town to work for these corrupt cops, and you end up getting sent to Las Venturas, which is another area of San Andreas, which is essentially modeled after Las Vegas, Las Venturas. So you get sent to work with the triads, specifically this character Woozy, who's like this blind triad member, to set up a casino and run out the other mob-run casinos in Las Venturas. So you spend a lot of time in the Las Vegas area, so to speak, kind of helping build this triad casino and stuff like that. It's really fun. I remember that pretty fondly. And you play in a lot of the other rural areas of San Andreas. I should mention, too, that this game is a much, much bigger than the other two games. We'll talk about that in a second. So CJ realizes his brother Sweet needs to get out of prison. So to do this, CJ works with an undercover agent to help accomplish this. So CJ works with this somewhat corrupt undercover agent to help get him out of prison. So he does help Woozy set up the casino, like I said, in Las Venturas. And then he does, after completing this mission with Woozy and getting the casino set up in Las Venturas, he heads back to Los Santos, where Tenpenny, the corrupt cop, orders CJ to kill his police partners, who basically flipped on him. So CJ reluctantly kind of follows through with this. And all the while, in the midst of this sort of tail end of the main plot line, you work with your friends in Los Santos to help reclaim a lot of gang territory. So you kind of go through different areas, clearing out different gang members and stuff like that. You can actually claim territory for your gang, and you get like reputation and stuff, which is really cool. Anyway, so at the end of the game, what happens is Tenpenny goes on trial for corruption, but is acquitted. And this leads to riots in San Andreas, mainly Los Santos. So like the whole end of the game is this really crazy, chaotic situation. And what eventually happens is you realize one of your best friends, Smoke, who's Melvin Big Smoke Harris, flipped on you and joined Tenpenny because he sees an opening so that he can get rich. So CJ actually ends up killing Smoke, and they have this huge gun battle. Tenpenny comes after Smoke is killed to kind of come and get his cut of the money. So CJ and his brother Sweet kind of chase after Tenpenny, and after this huge chase, Tenpenny crashes and dies. And then eventually you return back to the hood and you celebrate with your remaining friends. And that is the general gist of the Grand Theft Auto storyline. A lot more fleshed out than some of the other games. As you can see, there's this huge training day presence with Tenpenny being a really corrupt cop. There's a lot of different areas in San Andreas, like I mentioned when I was talking about the story. The state of San Andreas has several different areas, including Los Santos, which is mainly mirrored after Los Angeles. San Fierro, which is modeled after San Francisco. It has like the elevation where you kind of go up and then you go up and then you go up. It has Las Venturas, like I mentioned before, which is Las Vegas. It also has Red County, Flint County, Whetstone, Tierra Robata, and Bone County. So this map is huge, and I think that's the thing that made it my favorite. Is like you have this ability to just kind of go anywhere. If you want to be in the city and hang out, you can do that. If you want to go and hang out in the woods and find Bigfoot or hunt for Bigfoot, because I remember this is like I think the first game where they have like the Bigfoot legend, where you see like the handprints on the trees and stuff like that. And out in the sticks, out in the rural areas, you find like this guy who eventually gets you a jetpack. And I think there's just so much fun things to do. You can do like the flight school and learn how to fly better, and you get a parachute so you can jump out of any plane. There's this mission where you invade which is essentially like Area 51, and you steal is it a Harrier or something? You eventually get a Harrier, like a UFO. It's all this crazy stuff going on. But I think what makes this game my favorite is just the ability it has RPG elements. So with CJ, you can customize his appearance, his weight, his different abilities. You can change his hair. You can go to fast food restaurants and order different foods. You can work out. You can go on BMX bikes. There's just so much to do with this, and I think that's what makes this game so endearing. Is it came out just a few years after Vice City, but like the level of improvements here are just top notch. I have nothing but good things to say about San Andreas. It's a really important game to me, like in my personal upbringing in a weird way. So I think for me, this is absolutely my favorite of the original classics, and there's not enough good things I can say about it. I just think it's such a beautiful tribute to the early 90s. This game, if I didn't mention before, takes place in 1992, which was, as you can imagine, a pretty big year for LA. I think this is the year of or before the LA riots. So this is, like Vice City, is a great condensation of everything endearing and, I guess, culturally cliche about Los Angeles, the West Coast, and stuff like that. So my voice is running out, so Jeremy, I'm going to let you kind of reflect on this.
Yeah, my opinion reflects yours very, very closely. I would say this game is really groundbreaking in two major ways for the Grand Theft Auto series. As you mentioned, it adds the RPG element. When you're talking about improving your skills, you actually have little skill meters. I don't remember exactly what there was for, but I think there was like a stamina, shooting, driving. Yeah. So yeah, if you've never played one of these games before, as you do these things, you get better at them. Like
going to shooting ranges and improving your shooting skills, and I don't know if you can get full-on attachments for your guns, but there's a lot more customization options for clothing and guns and cars and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So it was a nice addition to kind of start bad at things, and then as you do them more, you get better at them. And the same thing you could go eat food and get chonky, or you could go to the gym and you had a little mini game where you'd lift weights, and then that increased your melee damage. Very similar to Grand Theft Auto 3. You're playing your own way. You build the character you want to play. And then the other thing it added was the turf war. There was not a mini game, but you would go to a different area that was another gang's, start attacking their gang members, and it would start a little turf war. When you gain control of it, it was yours. And one thing that I really personally enjoyed, maybe that was just me, maybe more people thought of it as kind of a hassle when you kind of take control of a zone, was it would come under attack. So there was this sort of maintenance piece to it where you'd be going to buy guns, and then all of a sudden your turf on the other side of town was under attack, which felt like the world was living. I'm not sure if your opinion on stuff like that, Reid.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think the gang element, the turf war, so to speak, was such a great way to kind of keep things fresh and alive.
You're always on your toes, because I remember games like Prototype or Infamous where there were much later games than this, but they added that zone control aspect of the game. But once you controlled a zone, it was just yours. There was never any upkeep involved. But I really enjoyed the constant threat of, oh shoot, my territory is under attack. And sometimes, I'm not sure if this happened to you, but 2 or 3 of them would be at attack at the same time, and you'd have to decide which ones you want to go try to defend. I thought it added a really nice element to the game and made it realistic in a way. It felt like you're in a living world.
Yeah, and I think the big thing that I can sort of sum up about San Andreas versus the other ones is that it has a definite sense of progression, because with the last two we talked about, 3 and Vice City, the games are awesome in the sense that you move from mission to mission, but this, you're not only moving from mission to mission, but you're also building your character.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, brings another level of attachment to it. And they really capitalized on this with, 5. I would say that San Andreas, again, this is just my opinion, but I think San Andreas is the best behind GTA 5.
Absolutely, I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I know some people love Vice City and its effects.
Vice City is a great game, and
it is.
I think one thing that I really enjoyed too was a view into a different lifestyle of crime. It added your protagonist as someone who wants something better, but still has these attachments to his people. You know what I mean?
Right. And with GTA 3 and Vice City, you're already an established criminal, and with CJ and San Andreas, you really start at the bottom. And,
Yep, and he's reluctant, right? He doesn't want to necessarily do these things, but he has these previous relationships that he still feels obligated to come in and do these things that maybe he doesn't want to do anymore, but feels that he needs to. Sort of a position that's forced upon him socially, which I think is more insightful to probably real world situations than maybe the creators realized.
I mean, he does go on to murder thousands of people, but
you gotta do what you gotta do, man.
I mean, he is a very likable character. I would say, like, you can dislike Tommy Vercetti and Claude from GTA 3, but I think something about CJ is he's still very likable.
I think he's more real as a character.
Yeah, I agree. I really like CJ.
And I think that's something you'll see reflected in GTA 5, especially, where they're starting to make their characters more relatable on a more personal level, as opposed to just, being a stereotypical gangster movie. They're people that have real life concerns, real life frustrations that you can identify more with.
Right, and I would say that's more identifiable with Franklin versus not Trevor so much, because he's just insane.
Wait, you don't identify with Trevor the most?
I love Trevor. Michael, I don't know how I feel about Michael. Again, this is turning into a GTA 5 podcast, but I do like. I like Michael's family issues are hilarious.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is I think GTA San Andreas is kind of the stepping stone to where they're starting to get more into their stride, writing more complex characters that have more connection to your common man in a less common situation.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, I don't think we can praise San Andreas enough. But is there any final conclusions that you have about this game?
How bad were you at the basketball minigame? Please tell me very.
I was really bad.
Okay, good. Thank goodness, because I don't know if I made a basket.
Yeah, some of these minigames that you can play in these games are a lot easier than others. Like you said, I loved the bench pressing game. That was a lot of fun.
The bench pressing game was fun.
My favorite thing was to go on the BMX bikes and just bike as fast as I can to get hit by a car.
Yes. Oh, that was another groundbreaking thing. It added bicycles.
Mm-hmm.
Now I don't remember.
And yes, you could swim.
Could you do tricks and stuff with them? Yeah, you could swim. Could you do tricks with the BMX bikes?
I don't think you could, no.
Okay, I don't remember being able to, so.
But yes, in this game, you can luckily swim. And there's a few sections where you have to dive into certain areas, but swimming's pretty rudimentary at this point. Right. But again, that I think this game is the not the prototype, but the mold for what other future GTA games would be based on. I think it really perfected the things that we saw with 3 and Vice City, and is really the perfect GTA experience on the PlayStation, Xbox era consoles.
Absolutely. I think if this would have been the last game they made, I think it would have been a real good one to end on, realistically. I mean, right. Not that I think they should have, but if this would have been, I think they would have perfected their craft at that point in time.
Not when there's money to be made.
No, you got to make that money, though.
Yep.
Let's just take a quick segue into sort of games inspired by GTA.
Oh, God. I think the first one that comes to my mind is the Saints Row series.
And that's exactly where I was going to go. So, your opinion, Saints Row versus GTA, which do you prefer?
I think the first 2 Saints Row games are amazing. 3 is pretty good. I think why Saints Row was so popular is because I think a lot of people, including myself, felt that GTA 4 was too much of a step backwards in terms of the humor and fun, because like we mentioned before with GTA 3, these are really violent, gory, adult-rated games, but what's interesting about GTA 4 is they really kind of strip things back and make it seem more like a Sopranos episode than a
Sopranos and a Sims game almost. I remember there being just a lot of writing. Don't you write letters to your cousin?
I think you text or email them, yeah.
Yeah. My personal opinion is Saints Row 2 is my preferred game after San Andreas.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people say that, and I would agree with that. Because I think Saints Row 2 was just ridiculous enough. It kind of keeps in with the same theme and atmosphere.
It's goofy enough, but personally, once we hit Saints Row 3, that's where it starts to get borderline too goofy.
Yeah.
And I think this might just be my personal taste in comedy, but for me, comedy is a seasoning and not the core of any sort of media.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't go watch a movie specifically because it's comedy. And then after that, Saints Row devolves into just absolute absurdity, which I'm sure is good for some people. It's just not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
But Saints Row 2 did something I think was really interesting with the multiplayer. You could play with a friend in co-op, and that's not something that Grand Theft Auto caught up on until 5 with GTA Online.
Right. I think Saints Row 1 and 2 are really the spiritual successor in a way to the San Andreas Vice City style of tongue-in-cheek but not too overbearing. But like you said, with 3 was still fine, but with 4 it really jumps the shark.
Absolutely.
So I guess we'll see what happens with the new Saints Row games. We do like that series.
Are they making more?
They are. They're rebooting it.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I'm kind of excited for that. I hope they tone it back a bit.
I think they will. Anyway, so let's conclude tonight's episode with a question. We'd like to ask a fun question to kind of end the night. Last time was the question of what are the Nintendo franchises as fast food restaurants? And this question is a little bit easier, and it is, if you could live in the game world of any one of these games, which game world would you want to live in? So I'll let you go first.
So personally, I think I'm going to go with Liberty City.
Really? Why is that?
Vice City's out. I do not like Florida. I've been there once. I had enough. I don't like the heat. And I would say San Andreas probably follows along the same line, is the temperature. I'm a very Midwestern man. I like my cold. And so Liberty City is more kind of crafted after the Chicago, New York sort of amalgamation of those cities. And that's something I would prefer as opposed to the other two, due to just familiarity and then also climate, because I'm a man of the North.
Sure. And that's a fair enough point. I think for me, I was originally going to say Vice City because I love the aesthetic, but I think it would get a little old after a while. So I'm going to say San Andreas just because, like, the early 90s with, like, the rock scene and the hip-hop scene and, like, just, like, the amount of things that you can do in that world is just awesome. Like, you can go to these different cities, you can go gambling, you can go...
Yeah, you don't like Chicago as much as I do you?
No, I really don't like Chicago.
I
Sorry,
enjoy
Chicago.
Chicago.
Well, we can go down there sometime and you'll see why, but... No,
I know there's reasons to not like Chicago.
No insult to our Chicago fans. It's okay, but I don't.
Hey, I'm all for that windy city.
Well, as a Milwaukee resident, I have to disagree. But, ladies and gentlemen, that has been our discussion on the classic Grand Theft Auto series, a series that both of us are really fond of, particularly the PS2 era ones. Maybe in the future we'll talk about 4 and 5 or some of the side shots, but we just wanted to kind of jump into another series that are near and dear to a lot of people's hearts. And that's really the goal of this episode. So that being said, Jeremy, I will let you leave us with some final thoughts.
Turns out crime does pay.
Yeah, especially if you're hitting kids in the head with after making lemonade.
One time this week. All right, don't bust my balls but once this week.
So ladies and gentlemen, just remember, you throw one baby off a roof, all of a sudden, you're the guy who throws babies off the roof. Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.
Take care. Vice City mirrors a 1980s Miami.
Miami.
Miami. Give me the gabagool.
Gabagool. We're going to Miami. We're going to see Miami. We're going to see the potatoes.
Sorry, I just put a sweatshirt. I'm like, my apartment's cold, so I'm shivering and having a hard time like actually talking.
Hey, then we gotta go to Miami.
Miami. All right.